So, everything I need to finish the Mini Velo bike is kind of in this box. There's a couple of bits that aren't. There's probably lots of bits that aren't. Probably gonna have to order a load of bits still. But there are some bits from the Mini Velo that I need to clean up. So let's clean some parts. So pro tip straight off the bat, Muc-Off bottles or bottles similar, they're so sturdy. If you just cut the top off, you can use them for storing bits. But these are the bits I'm going to reuse off the bike. It's quick release, there's the brakes, there's a few bolts and things like that. So once I opened the brakes to take the brake pads out, I noticed that the actual caliper bits was proper rusty. So I was quite surprised about that. The bolts were also a bit crusty and rusty, so I put it all in Vaporust. This one strangely wasn't as bad, so I'm not quite sure why the other one had so much rust in it, but... Okay, so a Vaporust. This is, if you've not heard of it before, this is a Vaporust. This is kind of old, used quite heavily, dark, horrible Vaporust. But Vaporust is essentially a rust remover liquid that's been sent from the gods. This is what it looks like. It does incredible things. Depending on how bad the thing is, depends on how easily it works. Like this stuff I basically left in there for the best part of a day, and then by the time I pulled it all out, the rust was basically just removed. You can use Vaporust over and over again, that's why the other stuff was quite dark, but I tend to go by, once you can't see the bottom, you refresh it. So after what feels like weeks of drawing on this bike, I had one little drawing left to do, 100 points to anybody who knows what the character is, and yeah, that was it, it was done. So the next thing I need to do is put the clear coat on. I use a spray.bike clear coat, I've used it a million times, but I got a little bit carried away and sprayed it on too heavily to start with, and the paint pen's cracked. I'm pretty bummed out about this, but I did it on the rest of the bike, more kind of like gradual coats, and it was fine, so it was just me. But I'll remember this the next time. Okay then, on with the build. Like I mentioned before, a lot of the parts I did reuse off this bike just to kind of make it as cheap as possible. So seat post is janky. It will need to be replaced because it's pretty ugly, but for now it's perfectly fine. I get asked a bunch about the grease that I use. It's the Muc-Off copper compound. I think I've brought it up a couple of times in these videos, but it is incredible. I've used it for ages now. Muc-Off was nice enough to actually give this to me. So if anybody from Muc-Off is watching and they want to give me some more, that'd be great. Thanks. Comment below if you also have this problem, but the amount of bikes I've done recently that has long head tubes and I can't use my tool, it's not right. So I had to use a hammer, but it was late at night and I didn't want to wake my child, so I kind of did it as much as I could, and I don't suggest you do this, but as you see the top cup isn't all the way in, so I'm just going to wrench it closed with the rest of the headset. It is like, don't do it, it's like can crush the bearings and like make it horrible, but I did. Don't do it. So for the stem that was on it was like that weird folding crusty thing. I ain't using that. I've got a stem adapter to put on it. And yes, I will clean my toothbrush before I use it again. And yes, I am going to reuse that joke. I stole this idea from the Psychopath on Instagram, basically just using spacers in between the kind of headset or the stem you're going to put on there and the rest of the adapter, because they're always quite long. And then I also realised at this stage that I should have put it underneath instead of over the top because of the cap, but anyway. And yeah, that's what it looks, nice and clean. And I'm sure you're all going to be glad to hear that I'm putting BMX bars on it, because BMX bars rock. Cranks and chainring are from a Suntour. I've used this exact crank and chainring on so many builds now. It's really good. There's nothing wrong with it. Solid, reasonably light, and cheap. So I have endless problems with drivetrain, so buckle up. But to start with, I use this chain guide. It's pretty cheap, got it on Amazon, but it's hella noisy, so I didn't really want to use it. Obviously this type of bike the dropouts don't really kind of give you a lot of space or any space, so you need something to tension the chain. So this is what I went with. The hanger also just kept coming loose. I think there was maybe an issue with the bolt or something, but I just couldn't get it to stay tight. I continued anyway and popped the chain on there just to see what the chain line was like, and it was awful, like really bad. The main issue was the chain tensioner, because it didn't give you a lot. So I came up with a cunning plan to use the derailleur that was on this to start with. But when trying to screw it back in, I realised that the hanger threaded itself. I say itself, I mean I did it, but I don't know how. So I went to bed and ordered some parts on Amazon. So a new hanger arrived, I put the bolt in, tightened it, and it was solid. So there must have been something with the thread on the actual bolt as well as the hanger. The derailleur I actually put in a vaporous overnight just because there's a few kind of bits on it, and a bit of a scrubbing. It looked pretty fresh again. So if I just put the derailleur on without any tension in it, it won't be in the right place. So what I did was put a brake cable, just because that's what I had, through the actual place where you'd put the shifter cable, and tighten it down in the right place. This did take quite a bit of fiddling. It's not as straightforward as just kind of like, there it goes. So I had to use the limiter screws a little bit and the tensioner and just play with it until it was in the exact right place. But once it was, it bloody went like a dream. Know those moments when you're like, bloody hell, that worked way better than I expected? This is one of those. I went for some nuke-proof pedals. I love nuke-proof pedals. The colours are great, the platforms are great, and they're well light, and they're not bad priced as well. Probably overkill, but that's fine. Brakes are just Amazon jobs. I've had them for a long time knocking about, and ergon grips, probably again overkill, but they've been sat there for ages waiting to go back on a bike, so they're now on a bike. So the brakes have been in the vaporous for a couple of days, and they come out pretty good. You can see the difference here, like there's with no effort. But make sure you use some sort of lubricant afterwards, or like a water displacer, to make sure there's no water sat in there, because otherwise it's going to rust again. While we're talking about evaporust, let me show you something. So this is kind of like a little storage area. It's kind of like a bike graveyard. Most of this stuff will get reused. There's a perfectly good frame there that's going to get built up soon, and that one, that's perfectly good. But I do have this bucket of junk. This is a long-term experiment that I'm working on. I'm trying to get this stuff as crusty and rusty as possible, and then I'm going to test evaporust and see how good it actually is. So if you haven't subscribed already, do, because you don't want to miss that video. So the brakes. I put the brakes on. I then put the back brake on, tightened it, and then went onto the cables. There's a reason why I'm talking like this, we'll get to it. I went purple cables because purple thought looked really good on this bike, and then I cabled it up. But then I used the brakes. I don't know if it's something I've done, but if you watch, it just kind of fails every now and then and just goes bam. I don't know why this does this. I tried tons of things to try and tighten it up, see if it was cable, see if this, that, the other. I couldn't work it out. So I ended up just putting these Tektro disc brakes on that I had knocking about. I've used these on many bikes and I know they're solid. Tektro get a bad rep, but like every Tektro product I have, if you set it up correctly, they're dope. But anyway. And that's what it's supposed to do. Now this bike's going to be a bit of a workhorse, so I want it to be able to collect parcels and shopping and whatever else, so it needed a big rack. This was from Decathlon. I don't think it's probably made amazingly well, but it's big and fits on the bike, so that's it. Should we look at the bike? So currently there's two problems. First one's easy, it's just the brakes are rubber and they just need some tweaking, maybe some new pads. I need to take a look at them. The second one is the ratio on the drivetrain. It's too loose. I like pedaling, just spinning basically. It's probably because of the small wheels. There's a different kind of bit more mass that needs to go into it, but basically I just need to change the freewheel until I get to the right size. But yeah, I love it. It's wicked. And that's the end of another video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment below, let me know what you think of this bike. It's very different from what I usually do, so I'd love to hear from you. But next week is a new project. It's the start of a very fun build that I'm going to be doing. But if you can't wait until next week, why don't you check out this video here? And as always, please subscribe, follow, comment, like, and tell your mum. Bet she'll love me.